Well, hello. So I'm making a hat in my Balla Stitch. And so I'll have to get you to catch up to me. And so first I'll show you what we're doing. There's my cast on here. Here is the brim I did. And I did the brim in orb stitch. And I also have an orb stitch brim video out there. But I like it. It's a nice stitch. And I like the way that it played against this one. So that's orb stitch, and then this stitch up here, see if I can get it in the light better. This is Balla Stitch in the round, and it's quite a nice stitch. Loose. I'm going to do a bulky hat, chunky hat, a chunky hat that is a slouch hat. Okay, and the inside of the stitch looks like that. Okay, so we got to get you caught up here. And the yarn I'm using is Rio Chunky. And this color is Heather. And the yarn is, I don't know if I can find it, but it is a percentage of wool and a percentage, okay, it is 30% wool and 70% acrylic. This is a really pretty yarn. It is a mix of purples and pinky purples, and well, you can see it here. All kinds of really nice shades in here. Really pretty. Okay, and it's a bulky. Get it back in its bag. And of course you can see it here. Really, really pretty yarn. Okay, so we need you to be able to do the brim. Oh, what else do I want to show you? The loom hook. Well, here's the loom and the yarn. The loom. Okay, here's the loom hook I'm using, and it is just it's a wood painted loom hook I got from a company that no longer makes them. There's similar ones on Etsy. I don't think they're wood painted like this, but there's definitely acrylic ones that are very similar in shape. Work just as well, just as ergonomic. Okay, and the yarn is a Cindy wood, or the loom is a Cindy wood loom, and it's a 5/8 inch loom. It has 42 pegs. So you can use any hat loom you want. You can use a 48 peg. You can use any from the circle sets with the appropriate yarn. Any hat, loom that you want to with the right kind of yarn, it still will work. Okay, and what I mean by the right kind of yarn is the right thickness of yarn for the gauge of the loom. And of course, gauge of loom is always measured from the middle of the peg to the middle of the peg. So from the middle of this peg to the middle of this peg, if you measure it, you get 5/8 of an inch. That's why this is a 5/8 inch gauge loom. Okay, so I will take you to the video of the brim, and then we'll come back and I will show you how to do this stitch. So we will see you in a bit. I'm going to show you how to do the orb stitch brim. So just do a slip knot, and we just tighten that. And then we're going to take this loop, we take our loom hook, we've got this right here on the loom. We're going to take the loom hook, put it under, and we're going to take the working yarn and we're going to scoop up some yarn. And I'm going to keep the back of it nice and tight. And then we take this loop that we scooped up, put it behind the next peg, put the working yarn through and snug it up. Behind, working yarn through and snug it up. And if anytime you feel your loop is too big, you can make it bigger or smaller just by doing this. Okay, so tightening it up. Next, put it behind and tighten it up. Behind and tighten it up. Behind and tighten it up. Just like this. And we just do that all the way around the loom. Snugging up as we go. Okay, kind of did that. Got a little bit twisted there, so that's all you have to do is go back in there, fix it up. You want to have a really nice stitch at the base. And then when we come to the end here, we're just going to put this one over that peg, tighten, take our loom hook, and do this and just knit this over. And if it's a little too tight, you can do the one stitch over and then the next stitch. Doesn't really matter. Okay, so then once we've done that, we're going to do one row of U-wrap, and we've already wrapped this peg, and then one row of purl just for the base here. So I'm going to do the U-wrap, and the U-wrap is a very easy stitch. You're just going to go over the peg like that and knit off, over the peg, knit off, just like that. And we're just going to do the U-wrap all around the loom. Okay, and I'm just going to put you on pause so you don't have to watch me going all the way around the loom. And we will see you in a few. Okay, and now that I've done the U-wrap all around the loom, I'm going to do one row of purl, and it's the only row of purl in this whole hat. But it will help keep the brim nice and straight, or whatever, if you want to do a different hat than the one I'm intending this brim for, you can do more purls if you want, but this is the only purl that you really need to do in a hat. Okay, so you should know how to do a purl. There's lots of videos on YouTube, but I will show you. You take your hook, put it into the loop from the top down, and then just scoop up the loop like that and take it off the peg and then just drop it on the peg. Okay, so taking the loop, pulling up the loop here and just putting it on the peg. Okay, very easy to do, really. So we just go all the way around the loom doing this stitch. Okay, so I will meet you up at the end of the row. Okay, so I've purled to the end of the row, and now we're going to do the first stitch in the brim pattern for orb stitch, and that is Jupiter stitch. And to do Jupiter stitch, we're going to take the working yarn, go in front of the peg, behind, and in front of the peg again like this, and then we're going to knit the two bottom loops over the top. And I'm just going to show you here. We're wrapping around twice, so this is the working yarn. So we're taking the loop from the bottom and the first row of the working yarn here. We're going to take both of them over and knit them off. Okay, so behind, in front, both the bottom loops, knitted over the top. Around, knit them both over the top. Okay, like a U-wrap direction. Around twice, knit the two bottom ones off. Make sure that you knit both bottom ones off. Don't knit this one over those two because you'll just get a knit stitch. You won't get juniper stitch. So put this in and knit it off. Okay, 2 loops, knit them off. You're in control of the tension because you're wrapping it. If you're too tight, you can't knit it over. Just loosen up your wrap. You're in complete control of the tension you use here. And as you can see, it goes pretty fast. You can just whip around. Okay, this is a 2-row stitch. This is the first row of it. So you just do first row, second row, and you keep repeating. Okay, so I'll do one more for you, nice and slow, and then I'll put you on pause and I'll get to the end of the, okay, I'm finished the row and I'm ready for row 2. Row 2 is just U-wrap. So you just U-wrap around the loom. So that's all there is to it. You do a row of juniper stitch, and then you do a row of U-wrap, and then a row of juniper, a row of U-wrap, and you go along until you get the brim the length that you want. So you just keep knitting like this until you get the length you want. Okay, so here's how our brim is looking. And it really is a nice stitch. I'll pull it out so you can see all the little orbs in it. But there you go. It's a very nice stitch and it looks good in a brim. So you can just keep going until you get it the length you want. And then you've got a nice brim to put on your beanie. Okay, so now that you know how to do the brim, we're going to go ahead and do the stitch. So right from finishing the orb stitch, which you'll finish probably on this peg, but I'm over here already. What you're going to do after you do that is you're going to just take the next peg and you're going to wrap around it and in front of the next peg. So you're going to go in front over 2 pegs. We'll get a bit closer here so you can see this. We're going to go in front of 2 pegs, behind, and in front of 2 pegs again. So we're going to have the bottom loops on here, this loop that's going over 2 pegs here, and then this loop that's going over the 2 pegs. Then we're going to take the 2 bottom loops over the top, and then over here the 2 bottom over the top. Now this one's always going to be a little more difficult, the second one. You don't want to take the wrong ones over, so your working yarn is always the top. If you get mixed up, go like this, put it up, and you'll see that that's the top, and then you take the 2 bottom ones over, okay, and then you snug it, and now you're always on peg 1. You go over 1 and 2, back behind, over 1 and 2 again, so you've got these 2 loops coming over again, and I'm just going to zoom in a little bit while we do this. There we go. Okay, so you've got these 2 loops coming over here. We're going to go take these ones over, take the 2 bottom loops, and go over the top loop. And again, we're making sure that we have this one, the working yarn on the top, and we're going to knit them over and then snug it up. So from behind, go over the 2, wrap it behind, go over the 2 again, and now you've got 3 pieces of yarn on each peg. See that? And you're going to take the 2 bottom ones over the top, and taking your time here, and then this one's the top. See, this can come up so you can't see, so always take this one and bring it up to make sure you know it's at the top. Knit them over and snug it up. Then you're going to knit over and over again, that 2 bottom over the top. Here's your top one. See how this one looked like it was almost as high? And then the 2 bottom over the top. Snug it up. Okay? So behind, you're always on peg 1. You go behind it and in front of 1 and 2. And in front of 1 and 2 again. Knit it over. This is the top one. Make sure it's on top and knit these two over. And then snug it up. Okay? Go over peg 1 and 2, back behind, over peg 1 and 2 again, 2 bottom loops over the top. Okay? Always make sure that this one's on top, and then the 2 bottom over the top, and snug it up. So behind, in front of the 2, goes really fast. Knit it over, and we can just take a look. And if you look, if you can see this, this is our new row here that we're doing here, and you can see how much, well, it's hard for you to see, but you can see that it's this much bigger. It really grows fast, really, really fast. It takes no time at all to knit this stitch, and it's very, very easy. It's just one stitch. Okay, so you're going to go over, behind, and go over 1 and 2, behind and over 1 and 2, knit them over, knit them over 1 and 2, over 1 and 2, knit them over, knit them over. Okay, over 1 and 2 and 1 and 2, just like that. So you're always do it. So I'll do it slow again. You have it snugged up. You go back, behind, and over 1 and 2, over 1 and 2 again. I also have a stitch video of Balla Stitch, if that helps you. That's pretty easy. That's all you do, and you can start going a pretty good pace. See, I pretty much know where my top one is, but because I've done it enough times now, but you always want to make sure you've got this top one, because on the second stitch, the first one's easy, second one, this comes up, this thing comes up here, and this can fool you into thinking it's the top stitch, and you don't want that to happen. You want to take that over, and that's what you're snugging up right there. Okay, so behind and over the next 2, and knit them over and snug it up. Now this is the kind of stitch you don't want to do on really, really short pegs. It might be too hard to keep it from slipping over the top because it's a bit looser stitch. You can if you're really good at that. If you ever have trouble with just your any of the stitches slipping off, you can just slip something over them too. Mine aren't actually curling up. I can even put it upside down and whatever. They're not going to come off, but you just make sure you snug it up at the end. So over 1 and 2, over over 1 and 2, and over 1 and 2 again, and knit it over 1 and 2, and over 1 and 2 again, and knit it over 1 and 2, and over 1 and 2 again, and knit it over. And you're just going to keep doing that until you get really close to the length you want. Okay, and for your slouchy hats, a lot of people do 10.5 inches, something like that. I only usually do about 9 because I have quite a small head. So what I would do then, if I was going to do 9, is I would do about 8.5, because we're going to take at least a 1/2 inch, maybe even a little more, to do the bind off. Okay, so I'll explain to you what we're going to do. Is we're going to do a really bind off that makes it nice and flat on the end, because that looks the best, in my opinion, with slouch hats. And that takes a few rows, and before we do that, we do a few rows of E-wrap so that the whole brim at the back looks like an even stitch, no lumpiness from when you do a different kind of stitch. So that's what we're going to do. So you're going to leave room to do that, to do a few rows. Okay, so you can look on a chart, but you should know what hat size and length that you're going to need for yourself. So just keep doing this stitch. I like this stitch. I doing the round project. I'm doing a shawl in it. I think I like it a little better flat, but it's sure nice as a round stitch too. I really like it. And it's so easy and fast to do, and you gotta like that. Now it's going to be a little bit of a loose stitch, but that's what I wanted in this slouch hat. I did a thicker, longer brim so that keeps the ears warm, but the bulkiness also keeps you warm of a slouch. So this is all there is to it. So you're just going to keep going till you get the length you want of the hat. You can also, if you want to do a brim that you roll up, there's something else I was going to show you. If you did this brim and you wanted to just roll it up at the end and wear it as a rolled brim, that's how orb stitch looks on the back. So you can roll it up like that. Or if you were going to do the kind of brim where you folded it over on the loom, then you would have the orb stitch folded over. Or you can just do it on its own as a thinner brim like that, however you like your hats, basically. Okay? And then I'm going to go around, 2 of them, knit them off. And you just keep doing that, going around and around and around with the one stitch. Very, very easy. So I'm getting longer here. I'm getting pretty close to where I'm going to be binding off. So I'll put you on pause, and I'll get myself a little bit longer, and we will catch up. Okay, so I've gone a little longer. I'm going to thought you might want to take another look at the stitch. It has a lot of nice texture to it. Okay, so that's how it looks. Now I've got it long enough, as you can, I don't know if you can see going down here, you know, how it's quite long. And so now I'm going to do the 3 rows of E-wrap. Okay, and you should know how to do E-wrap. E-wrap is going behind the peg and wrapping in front. And some people wrap the whole loom. I don't, because that's how you get laddering, so I just never do. So you're going to come around. I come around and just do 3 pegs at a time, but you can do E-wrap any way you want. Okay? I'm just doing E-wrap. Okay, so we just do 3 rows of E-wrap. Okay, so we will catch up, and I will see you in a bit. Okay, so I've done my 3 rows of E-wrap, and you can see them at the top that they're a different stitch up here. And now I'm going to take you to how to do that cast off, and I'm just going to take you to a cast off I already have prepared because it turned out well, and you know, that way I know it's a perfect bind off with no mistakes, no way I have to edit a lot of it or anything. So I'm going to take you to that, and then we'll take a look at the finished hat. Okay, so I will see you in a bit, and I'm taking you now to the cast off. Okay, so we're going to do a reduced brim on the hat. And so the first thing we do, and I've already done this, of course, is done the 1 row of E-wrap. So you can do this not just with this hat, but with any hat that you have that you want to do a reduced brim, so that it's not bulky, so it lays flatter, and it works especially nice on slouch hats. So whenever you do that, always do a row of E-wrap just before you start, no matter what stitch you are doing. And the reason for that is E-wrap is nice and loose, so it makes it easier to move stitches over. Okay, so that's the reason for that. So you do the row of E-wrap, and then we're going to start moving stitches to reduce. And this is a very easy reduction to get a flatter brim. We're going to count every 4 pegs, 1, 2, 3, 4. And on the 4th peg, we're just going to take it off the loom and then move it over to the peg before. So now you have 2 stitches on the loom, and number 4 is blank. And then you go 1, 2, 3, 4 again. You take the loom off, or the stitch off, and put it on the peg before. So now if we go from the beginning, we got 1, 2 pieces on here and a blank peg, 1, 2 pieces on here and a blank peg. And you're going to do that all the way around the loom. Every fourth, you're going to be moving over to the third. When you get to the end, if it's not equally divisible, you'll have some extra loops with thread on, yarn on, that you can't move over, and that's okay. Leave them on. It's better to leave them on than to reduce too much. So I'll meet you back when we get all the way and that we reduced by moving every fourth peg onto the third. So we'll see you in a few. Okay, so I've gone all the way around now, and I've moved them all over, and mine did turn out fairly even. I have just 3 here instead of 2. So that's all because it's not evenly divisible. Okay, so now what we're going to do is do another round of E-wrap. And how you do that is you E-wrap all the pegs that have yarn on them, knit them over, and with this one we take both loops over, then go behind any empty pegs and E-wrap the pegs that have yarn on them, taking the 2 off, skipping by going behind the empty peg, and then just E-wrapping. Okay, so you just do that all the way around the loom, and I will see you back at the beginning. Okay, so I've E-wrapped around the loom, and now we're going to do our next reduction. So we have the 3 pieces of yarn that are on the 3 pegs, and then on either side pegs with no yarn. So we're always going to be working with the ones that have yarn on them, and you're going to go 1, 2, 3, and you're going to take the yarn from number 2 now and move it over to number 1. And then on the next 3 peg grouping, you're going to do the same thing. Now on the first one I had 4 yarns, so here I'm going to just ignore the extra yarn here, and on 2 I'm just going to move it over to 1, like that. Okay, so you just go all the way around, taking the yarn from number 2 and putting it on number 1. It's a little awkward for me. And I'll meet you up when we have that all done. Okay, now that you've done that, you have yarn on every second peg. So now we just E-wrap around, doing the same thing, going behind the pegs with no yarn and E-wrapping the pegs with yarn. Taking both loops over, going behind the ones with no yarn, and just E-wrapping. So I'll see you when you have that done. Okay, so you finished, and then all we're going to do now is take this yarn and put it around the loom, and then another half. We just want to make sure we have it long enough, and cut it, because we're all reduced, and now we're just going to take it off the loom. Whoops. That off there. So you just take a needle. You can use your loom hook also if you want. You don't have to have a needle. And I'm just going to thread the needle with the yarn. There, got it this time. There we go. And then all you're going to do is go around the loom and just scoop up that yarn and get it inside this. So we go up and we just scoop up that loop. Okay, so I will just meet you up when we've scooped up all the loops. Okay, and then just be sure you've picked up every single loop, and then go back into the first loop that you started with. Then you can just take your needle off. At this point, I'm just going to cut this a little bit smaller so it's easier to work with, and then take my loom hook, and I'm just going to start popping all these off the loom. You can even do it with your fingers. There, and it's off the loom. And then at this point, all we're going to be doing is drawing in the hat. So just draw it in a little ways, and then you're going to take the yarn and put it to the inside of the hat, although the inside of this hat looks really good too, just as good as the outside. Okay, and then you're just going to pull it closed until you get it all the way closed. Nice and tight. Now what I do is I hold it tight, and I usually go in and check and make sure that I've drawn it up evenly, and you can see that. So just a nice flattened brim. But now we can put the needle back on, cut this shorter again. Just save enough to sew it up and weave it in. And thread your needle. Okay, now I want to make sure that this is nice and tight so that we don't end up with a hole anywhere. And then I'm just going to put this through a couple of the yarns and make a knot. And I got that tail stuck in there. There we go. Just make a nice tight knot to hold it closed. And then you can see where the center was right there. And then I'm just going to sew around it. Now, if you were sure this was always going to be the inside of the hat, you could even just sew it across. But I'm going to sew around to keep it neat, for the reason that I might be using this side too. This hat is very nicely reversible, but it gives you that option. And I'm just going to sew around. And every once in a while, I'm just going to put a little knot on it. There, get that working yarn out of there and sewing around here. And then I'm just going to do another knot. I just wouldn't want it to ever come undone. And when you're sure you have the hat all very securely sewn, you just do another little knot and you are done. There we go. And then you can weave in the end of the yarn. I'm not going to bother doing that now, just to keep it there. Turn the hat to the other side, and there you go. You have a nice flat brim. See? Just flattens it out. It has a really nice little shape to it. If you laid it down like this, you can just see how nice and flat it is. Just an easy way to reduce your brim. And it's really great on slouchy hats. Okay, so the hat is finished. And so I put it on my model here. She has a little bit of a loose head, so it's a little loose on her. But you can see how the back looks. It's in this nice star. And it does flatten out. You know, if you want to flatten it and wear it more of a slouchy that comes down like that. Hard to get it in the camera. You can have a slouch that comes down like that, or the kind that comes up like that, or however you want to wear this. So there you go. That's what it looks like, and you can see how the brim looks and how the stitch looks in the hat. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and until next time, bye.